Hello, welcome to today's webinar, Plan for What's Next and Optimize Your 2023 Marketing Budget. I'm Haydn Melia, Manager of Sales Development at Insider Intelligence, coming to you live from DC, and I'll be your host and moderator for today's presentation. I'm joined by my colleague, Senior Vice President of Data Products at Insider Intelligence, Monica Peart, coming in from Atlanta today. Hi, Monica.
Hi, Haydn. Thanks for having me.
Of course, couldn't do without you. Before we kick things off, a few housekeeping notes. If your colleagues have not yet registered, it is not too late, no problem. Please just share this link you used to register and they can join us right now. And of course, rest assured, you do not need to take any notes today. You will get a link to view both the slides as well as a full recording of today's presentation that can also be forwarded around to colleagues. We also want you to participate, right? We want it to be live. So please use the chat window on the right at any time throughout the presentation. Submit questions in real time or wait till the end, and we'll leave plenty of time at the end during the Q&A to cover as many questions as we can. So keep them coming. Let's get started. Monica?
Thanks, Haydn. Hello to all of our viewers and listeners. Good morning, depending on where you might be in time zone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm really excited to speak to everybody today about a new platform that Insider Intelligence has launched, which is Industry KPIs, and what it means for planning your budget for next year and beyond. And so let's just dive into what is Industry KPIs and how did we get here? We really started with the idea that we need to talk to our customers. We need to hear from our clients to address some of the biggest problems that they're facing with regard to KPIs and performance metrics. We know that this started with just having a difficult time finding the metrics in the first place, especially the metrics that are really key and critical to your business and moving it forward and optimizing. Next, we heard a lot of feedback around the limited scope of metrics. And what we know is true about performance metrics, there are a lot of them, but they may actually be specific to an industry, specific to a device category, or specific to a product category. And when you have one in front of you, it may not be yours. And so the limited scope was another challenge that companies are facing. We also realize that even when you find these performance metrics, industry KPIs, they may not be the most up to date. We find them in various reports across white papers. Many times these are closely held to the vest metrics, so they may not be publicly available. And so finding the right ones in the most up to date fashion was another challenge. So we sought after a solution, first of which being that we just really need one simple place to house a lot of KPIs, all of the KPIs that our clients and readers are looking for that will help them to optimize various segments of their business and of course their funnel, the customer acquisition funnel. We also know that bringing in that industry and vertical specificity was a really big factor in having the right metrics at the right time. And lastly here, making sure that they are regularly updated. We do work with sources to make sure that we're showing the most up-to-date data. And so that may mean a monthly report updated on a monthly basis, a quarterly report updated quarterly, or even an annual report updated on an annual basis, but really having those predictable timeframes where you know you'll be looking at the most up-to-date data. And so in addition to thinking about these breakdowns, we knew we wanted to partner with some of the best sources to bring in this data so that we could have trusted data across coverage areas, certainly category breakdowns, industry and vertical as we spoke about, but also geographic breakdowns. And thinking about this is really the flow into industry KPIs, those that are difficult to find, frequently requested, and the most critical, so that we can ultimately bring you metrics that can be compared across industry and category, that are recent, that come from a trusted source that specializes in measuring these types of metrics. And speaking a bit about our sources, we do work with over 30 industry sources that are performance marketing platforms. They are running millions of campaigns and gathering and aggregating that data so that we can see what is happening across the board, across the markets, and benchmark better. These are heavyweights within the categories of video, email, and SMS, e-commerce, search marketing, display ad marketing, as well as looking at customer feedback, say customer satisfaction, thereabouts, and also lots of different metrics across the marketing and retail e-commerce categories. So thinking a little bit about what we did in order to come to launching Industry KPIs several months ago now, back in April, we also looked into who would make the best users of this type of platform, who would get the most out of it. And we actually did identify some groups, especially roles within organizations that benefit the most from using KPIs. Those very obvious ones will be in marketing and advertising and media, I should say. And that, of course, is because many of the KPIs that are delivered across many performance campaigns have to do with ad performance and marketing performance. And so you'll see here roles within ad sales, programmatic management, media planning, as well as paid media and performance marketing will get quite a lot of benefit out of benchmarking with these types of metrics. Also, data and analytics. There is a research component when it comes to benchmarking and finding the right tools to benchmark against, essentially goal setting from a research standpoint. And so we find that data insights groups actually get great value out of this. Also, market intelligence, looking at your competitive set, marketing analytics, and also advertising analytics. And so these insights-based groups can also have a lot to gain from using industry KPIs on a regular basis for goal setting. Additionally, there are strategy components of key industry marketing metrics, looking at how to create a content strategy by looking at how that's performing across different platforms, retail and e-commerce strategy, how to make the most out of retail media offering and attracting clients, client strategy, of course, working with other clients on their strategic efforts and helping them to benchmark and understand their performance with regard to their competitive set. And lastly here, customer communications. Customer experience is really important. It's something that we focus on within industry KPIs. And so this is another outcome-based approach to see where are you with your customer? How can we increase or optimize that metric? As well as delivering brand partnership feedback and giving your brand partners or even agency partners and the ability to understand how marketing with another brand has created lift for them. And then within marketing communications, certainly an account management, helping to understand what communication ultimately lifts all the tide and really moves the needle in terms of optimizing across many different metrics. So we wanted to dive into a few use cases. Of course, our clients, just like any performance marketing platform would say, we're aggregating data. Our clients, we keep data private as well. And we thought that it would be really useful to call out some of the use cases without calling out any clients in particular, but some of the use cases that we see from certain industries. And I'll start first here with retail and e-commerce. It's definitely an industry that takes advantage of KPIs quite a bit. And so in this particular case, we were working with a major multi-channel retailer. Within their organization, they were trying to improve upon ad sales, and the strategy was within retail media. So with the challenge, trying to attract advertisers to the retail media platform, especially understanding that retail media media is definitely a buzzword right now. It's something that a lot of retailers are taking into account and building out a platform for advertisers to get more of their customers to understand their brands, get closer to the customer experience within retail, and ultimately incentivize additional purchases. And so for this category, the particular metrics that were important really scoped out around these three areas of the funnel, and you'll see this in a couple of other of our use case examples. But with regard to exposure, they really wanted to understand, what does digital commerce growth look like today? What types of acquisition sources should they be considering? Are these free acquisition sources like social, or paid acquisition sources like search marketing, for example? Within the efficiency category, we know that retail media cost per click is something that we're very much watching across the retail media landscape. Impressions, costs, all of those metrics are really key to understand how to convert advertisers to your platform. And so that was another reason for looking there. Also, digital ad click growth, to understand what has been the performance around that, and benchmarking, should they be able to optimize in that area. And then with regard to outcomes, conversion rate, what ultimately happens as they're tweaking different elements of the funnel and adding more granularity to this conversion rate, and what's happening with conversion rates across their industry, across the retail industry. So I'll move on to the next example here within CPG and consumer products. We were working with a major apparel manufacturer. Given that it is apparel, their organization was looking at digital marketing and e-commerce as their tool or avenue for channel operations. And the strategy around that was really split between direct to consumer, D2C, and also their multi-channel efforts with other retailers. And this is typical for brands that they'll be selling in many different areas. And so the challenge here was really how to improve efficiency at each stage of their acquisition funnel. And a few different metrics tended to be important for them. At the exposure level, acquisition sources, traffic share, efficiency here, add to cart rate, that definitely speaks to the e-commerce piece of this, understanding click-through rate across the category, cart abandonment rate, and bounce rate. That last one, something that we of course want to keep low, but all of these metrics being used for benchmarking and understanding where they are, what is good, are they on the track to improving those metrics within their own organization. And then from an outcome standpoint, looking at customer satisfaction and trying to enhance this across their brand offering.
Yeah, and one of the greatest examples of product innovation here at Insider Intelligence and responding to clients with product market fit as we launched iKPIs, particularly to CPG, is our ability to go deeper in product categories that we know the industry is in dire need of, right? So apparel, wine and spirits companies, luxury and beauty brands, payments companies in particular, seeing a lot of value. These are all places where in sales, we have clients constantly seeking more granularity, more info. With this product, they finally have it.
That's exactly right, Haydn. We definitely have quite a bit of coverage within CPG and consumer products, and that is just because the industry is so diverse. There are so many angles for this, and so this is one of the most robust deep dives that we offer through Industry KPIs, and showing granular product category detail for performance metrics. I'll move on to the next use case here, which is within agencies and consultancies. This is a very popular use case. Many agencies are working with different clients, like we were just discussing CPG clients. They may work with retailers and other types of clients that are working directly with other businesses or with consumers. And so there are a broad array of metrics that agencies really can take advantage of in industry KPIs. And so in this example, we were working with an agency. Their exact area of the organization was within media buying and planning. So essentially making recommendations to their clients around this. Additionally, within their strategy, marketing mix was what they were delivering upon. So giving comment to marketing mix there. And so the challenge was how to really deliver to the client a recommendation that promotes greater efficiency at each stage of their acquisition funnel. And for an agency, as I mentioned, this can be take into account lots of different metrics, and we've only pulled out a few here, but thinking about exposure stage, very much looking at acquisition sources, Facebook engagement rates. It's very true that when we're thinking about exposure and acquisition, social comes up quite a bit. And so it's really important that we have all of the social platforms and metrics for engagement, follows, views that are available across different platforms in order to compare what the engagement rates could be across different social platforms. And of course, this is determined by audience, depending on the audience that they're hoping to reach. Also at the efficiency stage, you'll see a lot of familiar ones here, add to cart rate, median monthly click-through rate. So tracking that in a much tighter time frame to understand how click-through is improving or not improving over time, and how to benchmark against that, as well as display ad CPC growth, that's cost per click. So understanding where that is going and where they are in terms of paying at that level. Are they getting the best optimized price for that type of display ad activity, and what could they be doing or working with the agency on to deliver a cost that's most effective for them. Additionally, looked at some outcome specific KPIs such as conversion rate and conversion rate growth and how this is trending. It's really important to understand how things are trending, which is why we include historical detail and data in industry KPIs. It's looking at, for example, a question around how have conversion rates changed from pre-pandemic timeframe to what we'd love to call post-pandemic timeframe, if we're ever able to. And then also thinking about right now where we are with regard to inflation and what it means for different marketers, marketers are different products as well as within different categories. And so this is a really important metric to track over time. And for the next example, we're going to the financial services industry. This particular case was from an internationally based neobank. And so we do have a good spread of international markets, all major regions and several major markets for all of our KPIs broken out. And so that is a really important point for any organization that is looking at movement within different markets and trying to benchmark across markets. That is also something that we took care to build into industry KPIs and continue to add market specificity. For the organization here, within the neobank, they are looking at their media and product management. And the strategy around this is really growth, how to grow their services across their customers, and essentially how to benchmark themselves. So as you can see here from the challenge, really trying to understand where they sit in the market. Are they at the top of the market in terms of KPI performance? Is there more room for growth? Where can they optimize? And so that led them to looking at these types of metrics at the exposure level. Some familiar ones: traffic growth, acquisition sources, efficiency level would be average page views per session, as well as bounce rate. We know that in financial services, another efficiency standard is around search, because search is how we find a lot of the financial services that we are looking for as consumers, as customers. And so this is another area of interest for financial services in general. And then at an outcome level, again, there with conversion rate, how does this ultimately transpire into conversions, signups for certain financial products that they have launched, as well as the growth rate with regard to conversion, what they can expect in the future.
Yeah, and much like the origin story of eMarketer, we've discovered a range of use cases in financial services, and not just the retail banking applications you might expect, right? With investment banks, iKPIs has quickly found a strong use case in supporting investment decisions for portfolio managers and investment analysts covering media equities and various tech stocks. Another reason why you'll see our analysts on Bloomberg Weekly talking about Meta, Snap, etc.
Absolutely, definitely a range of needs within the financial services space, and it runs the gamut, right? We're talking between insurance, investment banks, retail banks, and others, and so many different metrics there will become important to track and benchmark against. And then I have one last use case that I'd like to expose everyone to, which is the media use case. We spoke with a mass media company that was very much interested in their media insights. So this again gets back to that research element of pulling in KPIs to benchmark against over time, and understanding what the audience is doing based upon changes or optimization activities. And this strategy was all around ad effectiveness and trying to understand how to really position themselves as a mass media platform, to their advertisers and against competitors, really to understand what they are able to deliver at certain KPIs, as opposed to their total market, where they were higher, or could provide more than the total market there. And so really important at the exposure level, looking at what are Facebook engagement rates, where can they improve upon this to gain more audience. Of course, advertisers are interested in audience when it comes to mass media platforms, and making sure they're getting those eyeballs, so to speak. And for them, ad composition, where are the ad formats moving? This is really important, obviously, from a media standpoint. There are so many different ad formats that can be invested in, and that advertisers are investing in themselves, with regard to video, or premium display options, or looking at even social ad, knowing that that has now, of course, moved even more towards video. And so there are a lot of elements here for mass media to consider in terms of optimizing, as well as with the efficiency level, looking at monthly click-through rates, understanding if they are operating at least the average of the market, or if there's more that they can be doing to benchmark and optimize to get at the level of the market here. Again, we talked about how important video is to mass media. So video completion rate is another metric that they would be able to expose to their advertisers, to their clients, to say, here we are able to show that we have superior video completion rate, and also be able to optimize if need be, as well as looking through some outcome items. Whereas lift generated by dynamic creative ads, display ads that can be created and optimized on the fly. And so any lift generated is definitely an outcome that brands are looking for, that advertisers are looking for. And so this was a really important metric for them as a mass media company trying to drive advertiser interest. And of course, here, conversion rate, what ultimately is happening, how are they trending across the market for conversions. And so I wanted to talk a little bit more about what this means going forward. As I mentioned, we launched the iKPIs platform in April. We've had about 6 months of learning from our clients to understand what is it that this can be in terms of adding more metrics, adding more categories. And so we've been building along with our clients to make sure this has exactly what they need and are looking for in terms of benchmarking. And so a little bit about our roadmap and what comes next. We started, as I mentioned, in April with just 100 metrics, but 100 of the most important metrics as delivered by clients that either were difficult to find, are not often updated, or really critical to their business, really critical to understanding how are they performing. And we've increased this to 300 metrics as of September. And we know we will continue to increase this number, but we won't be adding indefinitely. One thing that we are absolutely hearing from clients, readers, is that greater granularity with regard to the same metrics that you've seen, click-through rate, display ad CPC, greater granularity around the industries or verticals or even product categories is what's really important. And so the next piece of what we do will absolutely include more of those granular breakdowns for existing KPI metrics, as well as how best to use them, best practices around how to use them together. And so that is where we are going next. Additionally, looking at some of the categories very near term for Q4, we know that mobile is a huge area of opportunity, but also a challenge area because of the data that is not available. After the IDFA changes and Apple privacy changes within the mobile use case, we know that data is sparse. Understanding how apps are performing, how signups are performing within apps is something of a black box. That we want to illuminate by bringing in KPIs that are specific to the mobile category and specific to app categories. And so that is something that we plan to launch here in Q4. And we also have been hearing much more around retail and how we cover retail with retailer specificity and understanding from an advertiser standpoint, what types of performance are they seeing with one retailer versus another? What types of platforms are creating the most opportunity for them, for advertisers in terms of ROI on ad spending, and also what is bringing in more in terms of conversions and all of those down funnel metrics. And so we will also be adding coverage for specific retailers within the ad and marketing segment. Think Target, Walmart, Instacart, really trying to showcase some of those really big ones. And last but not least, Amazon, showcase how they compare to one another with regard to different advertising metrics as well. And then looking out a bit further to 2023, we know there are additional metrics that we can add that will help to address some of the questions that readers have. One around marketing costs, CPC, CPM, but also looking at the costs across non-paid metrics such as content marketing costs, for example. What are the costs around influencers? Lots of different marketing cost metrics are available, and that's what we would like to add to our platform in order to answer some of these questions. Additionally, we have been hearing a lot about the B2B use case, and while we do have B2B metrics within the platform already, we want to specifically be able to compare those to the total market. So B2C, B2B, what's the difference there across different industries? That's really what we'd hope to get to, as well as SMB. These are critical differences from the total market. And we want to be able to show that across industries and verticals so that those who are working with B2B partners, partnering with B2B, and as well as selling into B2B organizations can have the critical metrics to showcase themselves against competitors, but also to optimize towards, to goal against. And then another big area that we know we will be building out in more depth in 2023 is CPG. We had mentioned earlier that we have quite a bit of depth within CPG. It's one of the most robust categories in terms of sub industry or subcategories, but there is more that we plan to add here within, say, beverages, food and beverages, being able to get down to the granular level of category that our clients are asking for and are seeking. So those are a few things that we have on the roadmap here. And then with that, Hayden, I'm really excited to hear if anyone has any questions. I'm handing it back to you.
Yes, the chat has been very active. So thank you so much, Monica. It is now time for our Q&A. We received a ton of questions from the audience, even ahead of time. So people submitted questions before the webinar even started today. We're going to start with those and we're going to move into the live questions. So keep them coming, please. If you're still typing something out, don't sweat it. So we'll start with this one. I love this one. Historic benchmarking works year over year when there is general economic stability with a statistical variation that allows for budgeting to be managed effectively. In turbulent times, that is not always the case. What are we seeing as we head into, without putting a real button on it, a time of uncertainty?
Yes, this is a really important question, and I'm really glad that this one came through. Uh, we are in that time of economic uncertainty and watching everything from inflation, costs, paying attention to retail, what it ultimately means for the ad market as well, with demand being a bit soft and expected to be softer than what we've seen in the past couple of years. And so when it comes to KPIs, we're watching a broad range of them for this. I would say that click-through rates, costs, in fact, is something that we're watching to understand how that's trending over time. It's still somewhat early days to understand what the ultimate outcome is of being in this time of uncertainty with regard to costs, but what we see is a demand slightly changing with regard to the ad market. And so we are very much watching those. I'm sure everyone had their eyes on, for example, the Meta earnings yesterday. And so these all play a part into performance indicators and where to benchmark. We're also watching to see from an outcome standpoint, how are conversions changing? And those are really, really big ones to watch, because that is ultimately what we're looking for, what ultimately moves the needle in terms of the outcome that we're looking, that brands and advertisers are hoping for their businesses. And so those are a few metrics that I would call out as very important to watch over the next several months. No particular trend is necessarily emerging right now, because as I mentioned, this is still early days, months into what has now been a somewhat tumultuous understanding of the markets. But those are ones that we're very much watching in terms of how things transpired going forward.
So we got a really great question around understanding benchmarking KPIs for both B2C and B2B marketing investments. And I know you said there's a lot in store on the B2B side. So I guess specifically, how would you speak to how our use case with KPIs can help someone who manages campaigns for other businesses or their clients?
Sure. And this is a really good one, because it's, as we saw, it's an area that we will be delving into more deeply. And the how of the best practices is where we want to focus that attention and energy with regard to KPIs. And I would say that's actually a really good question for our analysts as they build out those content pieces that will drive ultimately the best way to think about speaking to clients. But a number of metrics indeed will be important there. And we continue to build that out. And that's something that we know we'll be doing for the 2023 year.
Yeah, great. And like you said at the beginning, retail media networks been a huge topic of conversation here lately. I remember when we first launched in April, brick and mortar metrics were incredibly well received by clientele. What trends are exciting for you, or are you just watching in the retail space?
Yes, certainly retail media being one of them. And it comes up a bit more in the uncertainty argument as well. We are, of course, approaching holiday time, the holiday period where retail really shines. And there is, softness going into that. So something that we're watching with regard to retail is some of the metrics that are really key for retail media on the ad side. Impressions and what's happening there. Also with regard to spend from advertisers, and are they chasing the right level based upon the impressions that are there. One big trend that we are noticing already is really strong growth in impressions and advertiser spend to address those impressions. Really, demand is quite strong, and we expect that is really coming from e-commerce. It's something that we very much got to a new place on the growth curve with the pandemic and the reality of shifting spend to e-commerce from offline, from in-person retail. And that shifted a bit back a little, but we're very much watching to see if e-commerce is making up for that shortfall in retail. We're also watching foot traffic, for example. That's a really important metric within retail that we know is an indicator of whether e-commerce does make up for the gap. And for now, what we're seeing in terms of foot traffic is some softness. And it's very possible that for multi-channel retailers, this is absorbed in a direct way through e-commerce. But we're watching the gap there to understand, is this something to prepare for in terms of how to look at your benchmarks, how to understand whether you are keeping up with the move to e-commerce at the same time that maybe retail foot traffic will be a bit softer and is expected to be in the coming months.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you for that answer. It's very detailed. And, one of the questions just came in. What would you say are some of the most important metrics to track? I think you covered that really well along different types of stakeholders that we serve. But are there any key trends along, all industries, all roles we're serving today?
I would say there are definitely some key metrics that make sense to track over time. Um, Really, from a predictability standpoint, cost metrics, those are among some of the most popular metrics to track: CPC, CPM. Cost per lead, cost per install, which are a couple of metrics that we know we'll be adding in 2023. But looking across the marketing landscape, costs tend to be pretty important in terms of optimizing. It's something that if working with agencies or agencies working with brands, a lot of the recommendations back and forth really are around optimizing costs and adding greater efficiency to the funnel. I would also say that the bottom of the funnel metrics, such as lift, conversion, what ultimately happens on the customer satisfaction um, front, are really also very key to continue to track. It's really health of brand to understand where customer satisfaction is. But with regard to outcome based metrics, it's something to benchmark against historically and understand if we are performing at the level of the market, is that better or worse than how we as an organization were performing historically. That's a really important one to track over time, and especially in 2023 as we continue to see some tumult in the economy as expected. Conversion rates will be held, in high regard there, and something that should be definitely paid attention to. I'll make a mention about some of the top of funnel metrics. We get a lot of questions actually about social and where are the best engagement rates for my audience. Where can I see the most in terms of free acquisition as opposed to paid acquisition, trying to open that top of the funnel. And I would say those are metrics to watch for sure. It's it's across the board when we think about where consumers are. They're very much in social, and that has been changing and switching, of course, between platforms, and seeing where the best engagement rates are is something to watch over time.
Yeah. No, thank you for that answer. And keep these questions coming, guys. These are awesome questions. We're getting lots of different types of organizations asking really great stuff. So thank you very much for those in the audience. Another one. So, we've talked a little bit about geographic coverage with the international neobanking example. This product suite does give you some really great coverage of, a number of international markets. We do have Canada numbers to answer the direct question in the chat, but Monica, maybe just speak to geographic coverage as a whole.
Yes, sure, sure. So I did mention that we have broad-based geographic coverage across metrics. It really depends on the metric, of course. Many of our popular metrics will have very deep country by country exposure across markets. And so within APAC, Latin America, North America, Western Europe, you'll see several different markets within those major markets that are available across metrics. And we continue to add to that. There are markets that are really important for different things based upon where the client is based, and so we see a lot of movement, of course, around questions for APAC. New metrics for APAC is something that we all will be focused on for 2023. Also, Latin America, and most of our metrics will have broad coverage within North America and also Western Europe. So that this should give a view of where our metrics tend to lie, and also where we expect to be come next year as we continue on the roadmap.
Okay, awesome. And last question here, definitely not least though, what are the key themes for business in 2023 specifically? If there was one KPI to speak to for 2023, what would you pick, Monica? And then, how are we tracking that KPI heading into Q4? What are three things we can be concerned with tied to that KPI?
Yes, and I will say there are many to look at, so it's always difficult to say one. But if I would say one trend that is very important going into 2023, it is absolutely around costs and managing costs across efforts, across platforms, something that agency partners are heavily relied upon by advertisers, brands, and to help manage. And that is part of the reason why we intend to add more cost-based metrics, looking at even B2B, and also looking across different categories within marketing and retail e-commerce. Those would be probably the most important at this point. And it's really because in a time of economic uncertainty, spending will get pulled back, but it won't be pulled back completely. There will still be marketing and advertising activities. There will still be content marketing and working with brand partners. There will still be all of that. And so the more important question is, how do we do it in an optimized way? Are we spending too much in a category? Are we maybe not spending enough in a category when you think about across ad formats or across platforms where the exposure could be higher? And so we're paying really close attention to costs, and also launching new cost metrics to address that. And so that's probably where I would put a lot of focus.
Awesome. And it sounds like there's so much stuff that's in store that's really, really exciting. So thank you so much, Monica. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today's presentation. We're not disappearing though. Please shoot us a line if you had additional questions. Monica, Thank you so much for running this today. This was unbelievable. And a huge, huge thank you to our production crew as well. You made this entire thing possible, and we couldn't have done it without you. We really hope you enjoyed the presentation, took away some new insights. If you're looking for more information, you want to continue the conversation, again, please reach out to us via email, or we can follow up. We do have the link to the presentation going out momentarily, so that was another mechanism for follow-up. Keep your eye out for that. Any other questions, come our way. Thank you so much for joining us. Everybody, have a fantastic weekend.